the 22nd. I'm gonna think for a second. It's the 22nd. Now I gotta check, because I didn't check when I started. It's the 22nd. What's the odds I'm right? There you go. Have a great night, everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. I made it. Okay, let's just jump into the madness. So they're going to start dumping the water in 48 hours. And then they retracted it and said that it was leaked. And so we've seen this kind of precursor, like a false start so they can judge the reaction if there's any adverse reactions. No. That wasn't the actual time we're going to announce it. If you don't get a big blow up, then they'll just like... Wastewater from the ruined, and to show you these pictures, right? These far away pictures. Because if they show you close up, then you're going to be like, wait a second. What's going on here? So I think the whole world owes, all of these people should get Nobel Prizes because they're on top of that building. They killed themselves so that we can get breaking news. Of course, they didn't die and they weren't on top of the building. So there's 4 reactors. This is 2 of them, reactor 3 and 4. And so they probably look perfectly normal to the average person. But in fact, there's only a tiny fraction of the building remaining. So normally the buildings would be really tall. And so this piece right here is that piece right there. So the buildings are 150 feet wide and they're 190 feet tall. And so that's the bottom section, which is that piece right there. And that piece is, if you stack both of these on top of each other, the remains, that piece right here is taller. And so at the top of the buildings, right up to the top, that's where the fuel pool is.
Standing is on top of what used to be reactor.
So how can he be in the fuel pool? Because that's what they're all pretending. They're all, oh yeah, no, we're in the fuel pool. Trust us, we're the major media. But the problem was, the top of the building is up there, and that's reactor 1. And this is the bottom frame, which is right here. And so once again, before we jump into it, reactor 3 and 4 are gone, so are the fuel pools. And so they got people pretending they're coming out of a building that don't even exist anymore, in paper suits no less. So what happened was the radioactive fallout actually covered the whole planet and started catastrophic change in the environment because you kill the bacteria and the fungus in the forest and you kill the species. And so this is why the whole planet is actually burning today. It can't, the forest can't uptake water because you don't have the biota, the radioactive fallout wiped it out. Nobody cares because then nuclear looks bad. So it's better to sacrifice 8 billion people and 8 million species than to tarnish the reputation of something as evil as nuclear, apparently. That's the world we live in. Get used to it. Wastewater. Release plans approved by UN Nuclear Authority. Of course, we covered this last night. They're not an authority. They don't have sovereignty over any country. They're just a subsidy of a big corporation. They said there's 1,000 tanks, but we've never seen a picture of the 1,000 tanks. So why not show us the picture, right? How can that be so bad? In defiance of opposition from fishing communities. And China. Some scientists, a couple. The plan has caused controversy because the water contains tritium. Now, of course, you can't just They're pouring water over the actual melted reactor cores, not the imaginary ones, but the melted ones. Well, what didn't cover the planet, this is a model based on, at this stage right here, that's 20 days of fallout from France, and that's 30 days of fallout. Because I know this sounds really weird, but the buildings are actually destroyed, and they're not actually on top of the buildings. They're not on top of the building to your left because it doesn't exist. So the 70 of those reactors in America, so they just shot at one of the reactors and pretended they're on top of the building, and all the media lapdogs came out and tried to, and probably successfully, convince you that it looks like that and not like this. And Dana Arnie Gunnarsson, the operation he ran made the racks for the assemblies for the fuel pools, Dana, and he says that they're not gone, so they're not gone, Dana. He made the racks. You didn't make the racks, Dana. I hear you. I do so. All the media said the same thing, that it's harmless, so there's nothing to worry about. So why censor me like this? Greenpeace, who's considered controlled opposition to anybody that's realistic, has described the filtration process as flawed and warned that an immense quantity of material will be dispersed into the sea for coming decades. So they're denying that this has been going on for a decade, is what they just done. That's what Greenpeace... and by the way, Sean Burney, the senior nuclear specialist at Greenpeace, worked at Donerae for his career. And Donerae, of course, was a fuel processing mixed oxide site in Scotland that was owned by the United Kingdom. And they expect it to be about 315 years before they can clean it up. And he don't advocate cleaning it up, by the way. In a meeting on Monday, the head of the National Federation of Fisheries Cooperative Associations in Japan, Kishida, which is the Prime Minister of Japan, and current, they go through a lot, right? They're like Starbucks down there. Attempts to reassure the fishing community the discharge was safe. Again, pretending that didn't happen. That's the only way you can say it's safe is to pretend that's not real, right? He said they understood the water release could be scientifically safe, but still feared reputation damage. So you're talking about the population. So the population is worried about on fear of reputational damage, which is just as a made-up thing with the world's media. They've never stopped dumping it, obviously, right? Because look at it. It doesn't even exist. And that's why the poll tonight, could Japan's engineers put Fukushima Wastewater, that, as I covered last night, the International Atomic Energy Agency's star, Rafael Grossi, says it's so safe you can swim in it and drink it. And when I put it in a mine shaft, why dump it into the ocean? Well, the idea of dumping it into the ocean is, so the cover story was they got 1,000 tanks and everything is going in the tanks. They changed the story 6 weeks ago and claimed it, and I covered it extensively last night, that part of it, where he said there's only 2.2 grams of tritium. That's what got out of these buildings. Nothing else got out, and the buildings are actually gone. And so they said they got to get rid of it, dump the 1,000 tanks because they're afraid of an earthquake. But they say it's going to take 40 years to dump what they got, but it's like they're never going to stop producing. It's a perpetual machine. You got to pour water over the melted reactor cores. And you can't store this in tanks because you're pouring it over the reactor cores that are melted down. And so you're talking about fuel particulates. And what that means is the water is actually so radioactive by the liter that 2 liters of it in a jug at a subway station, everybody walks past it will die that day for 1 million years if the jug doesn't break down. Okay, so they want to avoid this storing it in because they don't have it in the tanks, right? The tanks are empty. if you fill up a tank with this stuff, you're talking about 1.4 million sieverts. And 3 sieverts is a lethal dose, and the tanks need to be about 6 feet thick to protect you from a small amount. So how thick does it got to be to protect you from this amount? And so there's a bunch of problems with it. If they were, because this stuff they're claiming, they're pouring over the reactor core and they're sucking it up, filtering it. Half of it gets sprayed back on the melted reactors, and the other half that is they claim is filtered goes into the tank. And so if you try to filter it, first off, the hoses you're using, the pipes, would have to be about 6 feet thick, and there'd be lethal doses right away to walk past them, let alone to walk over these pipes and hoses. And when you see pictures of the facility, they're not 6 feet thick. And then if you put this, because you're talking about all the gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas are going into the tanks and the filters at the same time. And so you can't filter this, because that's, when you put all this together, that'll cause the neutron source will cause a chain reaction, a criticality in the filter. But the other problem was the filter becomes thousands of sieverts in a few minutes, because you're talking over 2 sieverts of beta per liter. And the tritium, they'd done this a few years ago. They had a mascot, and they had merchandise, T-shirts, and stuffed toys, and Japan turned against them. They had to shut the whole operation down. Now it's cropped up again 6 weeks ago. And the idea was to use it, it's a weapon. The word tritium and the fabled tritium is a weapon for South Korea's population, Taiwan's population, China's population, and Japan's population, Indonesia, etc., But for the Asian, these are the 4 vocal ones, not Indonesia, but South Korea, Taiwan, China, and Japan are working together to manipulate the population. 80%, 86, 87% of Taiwan is livid, and they believe it's tritium, and they've been artificially pushed that way so they can't have a real conversation. They've never seen these pictures. Literally the majority of the population of the entire planet has never seen the pictures, or this story wouldn't be able to work, right? The wastewater includes rain and groundwater, becomes contaminated when it's used to cool the nuclear fuel rods. Well, the fuel rods are melted down to what's known as a curium. So the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel, the melted fuel, is curium isotopes. And curium isotopes killed all the dogs in all the studies. And it's actually worse than plutonium for energy than plutonium, which is nasty. It's named after the devil appropriately. And curium isotopes need lead shielding for whoever's handling it, 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium. So it's a really nasty, vicious, genocidal isotope. And it's the biggest emissions, not cesium, not iodines. It's the most prolific isotope imaginable, and it's the most lethal. And it has a longevity, very long half-lives, where it maintains those particular attributes. It's being held in more than 1,000 steel tanks on the site. So you can't store it in tanks, but we'll cover that for you right in a moment. TEPCO, which was bankrupt right away, by the way, which is an operator, but they didn't construct it. They're not a decommissioned authority. So they were symbolically left in position of authority because they were nationalized immediately after the meltdowns because they went bankrupt. People just start pulling their money out of the stocks, right? But there was a lot of stocks that people lost the money. So what they done was the Japanese government nationalized it, and it's known as corporate personhood. So they nationalized it, which means the Japanese government was now in charge of this fictional corporation. And this way you don't blame the nuclear industry, you blame the fictional corporation. And if the heat gets too much, or the responsibility or litigation becomes too much, then they just go bankrupt. You damn TEPCO, kill the ocean and the species worldwide. But it was actually the nuclear industry. And they're very intelligent. They don't have empathy at all, right? That was breeded out of them generationally, because they're the inbreeds of the corporations for 80 years in the nuclear industry. Is the current administration between the nuclear industry. TEPCO, which is not a decommissioning authority, does not have like this fictional advanced liquid processing system known as the ALPS. Removes most elements except for tritium. We'll touch that right away. Water will be released at a maximum rate of 500,000 liters a day. So that's the first time that we actually got a number. So that's a significant number, right? And that's going to be their official numbers from here on out. And so I got to put that in my pile of just scumbags so I can find it. And there's no shortage of this, by the way. Okay. So I'm going to show you the story of the tanks to make sure that you're aware of how that actually, because that's super important. We just got one more click to get through. Japan will also test the fish in the water near the plant for plutonium, Dana? No. Uranium? No. Strontium, Dana? No. Silly. Tritium. See how this works? Okay, so we're going to explain the tanks. We're going to take you back to 2013, 2014, 2017, 2019, and 2021, and then 2023. And we'll do that in a nice, quick, easy package so you can understand the evolution of the tanks. Ho-ho! There we go. And pay particular attention to the name of the authors, Mari Yamaguchi and the Associate Press. You'll see that repeated. So 2013, they had 1,000 tanks. In 2014, Mari Yamaguchi, they had 1,200 tanks, large tanks. In 2017, they had 900 tanks. And try walking with both of your feet flat on the ground. So this homeless person probably died that day to get those shots. 2019, 1,000 tanks on that line, the beginning of that line there. 2021, 1,000 tanks. Tanks were all built in 2013, specifically for what they're doing now. 2023, Mari Yamaguchi. And this line right here, 1,000 tanks. So 1,000 tanks in 2013, 1,000 tanks in 2023. And the story is they can't put it in a mine shaft or anything like that. They can only dump it in the ocean or boil it into the atmosphere. That's because you can't account, right? They can't keep hiring people to keep the lie alive, and so they need a permanent solution to telling a lie, the same lie for 12 years, and that is going to be the dumping of the tanks. And so they're just going to bulldoze their way through it, and then it becomes law and everything else. Everybody goes back to sleep, right? Except for us, of course. AP gets a rare look at 2023 this year. And so and then the pictures they're showing you now are the mixing. This is where the salt water comes in, mixes with the water from the tanks, so it meets so-called regulatory standards, which are from a corporation known as UN, and one of their subsidies, and they have many nuclear subsidies. You have ERPA and Unclear, and the IPC, or the IRPC. They have the International Atomic Energy Agency. They have a whole lot of nuclear companies, the World Health Organization, and so they all back each other up. Well, the World Health Organization told us it was okay, said the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they're both United Nations. And then Greenpeace, which is controlled opposition, will say we found a bit more tritium than they said was there, and thank goodness they're doing their job. You better correct that, TEPCO. And TEPCO's like, yes, sir. This is how the whole bloody thing works. So Fukushima, which is 2 kilometers and joined on to the site itself, and is abandoned, is stored in 1,000 tanks, 2023. So they haven't built a single other tank since 2013. And when we counted the tanks, the most we can find is 750, not 1,000. Okay, so here's the next part. So the water filtration system, if you go back 2014, there's parts of the site they can't go to because they're so radioactive. But the advanced liquid processing system has yet to function. Well, yet to function is the right words for this story, because we've been covering it long before that. So that's April the 21st, 2014, 3 years after the meltdowns, and they still couldn't filter the water. But it doesn't stop there. In 2014, 3.5 years later, the REVA system, which is the exact same as the ALP system, had been unused and kept out of operation. So you had the ALP system unused and kept out of the operation, the REVA system unused and kept out of operation. You had the series system, which was supposed to just filter what they were claiming for 80 years. We've been listening to this lie about the cesium being the biggest concern. The series system still hadn't worked. That was 2013. Then we never heard about it no more. Okay. The bypass operation where they were going to channel the water from the mountain around the site so it didn't run through the site, that didn't work. The ice wall didn't work. Or they didn't build a $1 billion fence. They said, but you can't build a fence to stop radiation. It has no top, has no bottom, so it just runs around the plant, even if it does stop it. Then the ice wall, which is just the most bizarre statement imaginable. Why wouldn't you build a real wall? And the list goes on, right? Okay, so back to the stories from today. Fukushima nuclear disaster, Japan to release treated water in 48 hours. And so this got retracted, a couple of stories retracted it. Now this was BBC. This was a story from BBC. And they had one of their, like Rupert Winfield Hayes, I showed you earlier, pretending he was in Reactor 4 fuel pool. He actually done the same thing for Reactor 3 fuel pool, which is also missing. And this creepy species, Khalid or something, Tokyo correspondent, what a horrific liar, the stuff that she claimed. They're claiming they're in the ALP system, and this is allegedly the ALP system. and same as the tanks, it was built to manipulate you. Now, if it was real, there'd be ALP systems worldwide, right? Everybody would like, I want an ALP system too. But the material we're talking about, you're pouring it over a melted reactor core. You can't put that in pipes or lines, and you can't put it in filters. It doesn't work that way. This is not like oil or a gas filter or something. This is radiation. And the attributes of radiation. And so, watch that video was surreal how evil that person actually is. And what they're trying to do now is convince you to grow fish in water from the tanks. The tanks were empty because you couldn't filter it and you couldn't store it. It's been going on for 12 years, and a normal reactor would fill up all the tanks 6 times a day because they need 1 million gallons a minute. They need 4,500 tons every minute. It was and we expect that today, of course, right? The event is regarded as the world's worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. There's never been a Fukushima before. It's 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools are gone. Chernobyl was a new reactor. It was 2 years old. Didn't have any fuel pools. Anxiety and anger over Fukushima nuclear waste plant. So they've been artificially hyping this. And so I'm still got, because we've been talking about this a lot, because we've been at this every show now, 5 shows a week for almost 6 weeks, because this is big news, right? And one of the theories we got, and it's still possible, and even if they start releasing it, it's still possible, with the fake releasing, because they've been releasing it straight for 12 years. What I was expecting, because it's really weird, you see all this protest for tritium showing up worldwide, and that's encouraged. It's published in the media, it's on TV, and everybody's talking. If you ask anybody about Fukushima right now, they're going to like tritium, right? And everybody's, oh, well, it's harmless, Dana. The scientists, trust the experts. Trust the experts. The news cockatoos. Nuclear plants around the world regularly released wastewater with tritium, Dana. And levels above Fukushima, Dana. But Fukushima's actually, we've never seen an event. No. We've never seen an event like this before. South Korean governments endorsed the plan. Hong Kong said it would immediately activate import curbs. So the most important thing to remember is that Hong Kong knows it looks like this, right? That Taiwan knows it looks like this. That South Korea knows it looks like that. That the International Atomic Energy Agency knows it looks like that. And so do you right now. But you're it. Your friends and neighbors don't. And this is the game that they're playing on you. So 48 hours. I set my timer, by the way, for 48 hours. My alarm is going to go off. And the world is not going to be any different because you haven't stopped releasing it into the environment because they don't have any control anymore. It's, majority of it's already long gone. And the stuff that's left, they got to pour water over perpetually, but it's actually fuel. They call these things perpetual machines because they're always splitting atoms. So number 3, just a single reactor. When that blew up, it ejected reactor core and the fuel pool into the buildings. But officially, they have videos claiming to get the fuel into the pool. We mocked them. When they came out with the story for 6 days straight, we covered every headline that I could find. South Korea knows the difference. South Korea is not naive. Global news, Japan started releasing treated, which is complete. And the implication when you hear the word treated is anything that's left is tritium, which is the last isotope you worry about, but you definitely should be worried about. But it's the last one that you should be worried about because the reactors are actually destroyed and have lost their inventories, which is a significant catastrophic event for humanity and the 8 million species. So TEPCO, the local fishing groups who fear reputational damage, they don't know any. And so this is a construct of the media, this narrative. And you'll see it everywhere, every day, all the time, that same exact narrative. And you'll see it for the last 6 weeks if you retroactively go back and aggregate the stories. You'll see this almost every single story, this narrative. And everybody could know to say that particular sentences, right? But that's what they done. I've asked TEPCO to swiftly prepare for the water discharge in accordance with the plan approved by the non-regulatory agency. The Nuclear Regulation Authority in Japan was created post-nuclear meltdown, not pre-nuclear meltdown. Japan has said the water release, they were there to control, to be in control, right? Afraid somebody else show up. Like Safecast, right? That's the industry itself. They created them to control the narrative, the independent narrative. And it's despicable. It's absolutely criminal what Safecast has done. And Japan should 100% arrest people like that, Nasby Brown. And Japan you can hang people in Japan. Those people should be publicly hung. But they're working for the Japanese government, so that's never going to happen. Japan has said that the water release is safe. But of course, who gives a fuck what Japan says? It's not safe. It doesn't work that way. You can't defy science. Trust the science! The International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN nuclear watchdog, UN is the 195 militaries. They were created in the ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Their previous name was League of Nations. When they changed their name, the first thing they done to celebrate was they took a country that was enslaved by Japan for 50 years, was occupied and destroyed. That country was North Korea. And they went in and they dropped more ordnance and munitions than the entire munition inventories they used in World War II on this little tiny country known as North Korea. And it was around 4 million civilians, not soldiers, but civilians killed, like every war. And millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions and millions and millions of orphans. And then they put land, sea, and air embargo. This is United Nations we're talking about, by the way. And they have their own military, right? And then they put a land, sea, air embargo for the last 70 years. So for the last 120 years, North Korea has been occupied, first for 50 years by Japan, and now for 70 years by United Nations, which is the military-industrial complex, and uses United Nations as the boogeyman, who hasn't attacked anybody in 120 years. But how many people has United Nations coalitions attacked? They are the war worldwide for the last 70 years, right? And they hoodwink the entire planet. They have a entity for just about every facet of your life now that controls and dictates your lives. George Bush Sr. called him New World Order twice in a speech. George W., the sadistic demon Bush. China bans seafood imports from 10 prefectures. So it's impossible that China doesn't know that. Like the reality is so disproportional from the truth. It's hard sometimes for me to reconcile that people don't know. It's incredulous that people still don't understand the importance and significance of this. This is a serious event for the future of humanity and the 8 million species. There's the stump, the Medusa of Reactor 3. That's the Medusa of Reactor 4. This is what it looked like originally. So they stripped it down, both of them. This is what you ended up with. The media worldwide pretended that they were in the fuel pool. Why would the media worldwide do that? They were pretending it didn't happen. Fuel pools would be at the top of the buildings. Japan says the release of treated radioactive water from Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea to begin as early as August the 24th. It's less than 48 hours, right? Today's the 22nd. And so then there was a correction. A previous APNewsAlert erroneously reported would begin on that date. Now they're claiming it's not happening on that date. And this is a normal routine when there's a big controversial thing going on in country worldwide. It'll be like this, like a fake start in a race where somebody accidentally jumped the finish line or the start line. And everybody got to get back into their key positions, right? And sometimes you can gain advantage because the one who's destined to win, right, a lot of it is predicated upon the start. And so if you can throw them off their start, you could get that millisecond important leap on them. And we've seen that many times throughout history. I remember years ago when a friend of mine got a speeding ticket, and I said, I can get you off, because he was going pretty fast. And so I went up to the court, because once my buddy told me the story, anyway, we got the police, I was representing my buddy, the judge let me do it, and we got the police officer on the stand. And I said, so you chased after him, you seen him speeding. He said, that's right. He was, the cop was really vocal about it, right? I got him agitated when I was talking about it. And I said, you sure he was speeding? He said, no, he was speeding. I said, well, are you sure? He said, did you have a radar? No, I didn't need a radar. He said, I knew how fast he was going. And back then, that was good enough, right? And so I said, so he was going fast, okay, and so you chased after him. And when you got behind him, what did you do? He said, well, I turned on the lights. And I said, so you were speeding without your lights, is that correct? He said, well, yeah, well, I didn't want him to know I was coming up behind him because he was so fast, I wanted to catch him first. I said, but no, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, were you speeding without the lights, without your sirens and lights at a high speed? And she says, no further questions, Your Honor. And then I asked the judge to dismiss the case or give the officer the same speeding or the same fines he's going to give my buddy, right? The judge threw the case out. Because he's not allowed to do it, right? So if he's coming after you, you better have his lights going or you can win that in court easily. And if you were going really fast, that's important to know. And he was definitely speeding. But he was doing it on purpose because he thought he could outrun the cop, right? I'll admit, not too smart. But Japan to begin releasing water as soon as Thursday, give or take a few minutes. They're set to release the Fukushima water. CNN Anna's Coren reports. Well, that's kind of interesting. She's the same one who claims she was in the reactor 4 fuel pool. Let's play the video. That's her at the bottom left-hand corner. We'll get to it. Oh, I screwed that up, did I? Okay, that's BBC up in top right-hand corner. Anna Coren, that's her right there in the bottom left.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
So does anybody really think that she's on top of the Reactor 4 fuel pool that doesn't exist? So then the question is, why is there any kind of debate? Why can't Japan put it in a mine shaft if it's just tritium? Because that's the official story. It's 2.2 grams of tritium, right? So why, we almost got a 50-50 vote. And I've never seen that before, by the way, a 50-50 vote, because my polls are always based on facts, right? So they could put it in a mine shaft if it's just tritium. Absolutely. The only problem is there's nothing in the tanks, and the reactors were gone 12 years ago. And the tanks were the cover story, like what you see these people doing, for what actually happened, right? And so now that we're at this stage where they're going to announce that from here on ever after is never up for debate. They're allowed to do it, and everything gets dumped into the ocean. It's all filtered. There's only tritium. There's only 2.2 grams of tritium. And I'm going to release 0.06 grams of tritium. Not tritium-3H, which is what the reactors make, by the way, but tritium, which is the natural stuff. So they're going to release half a banana a year, basically, according to their science. So Thursday, should we have a party? Should we celebrate the extinction, the end of humanity as we know it? Because now there's no checks. There's officially never will be a checks and balances possibility ever. And if you go in retrospectively in the future and you get the ability to control the site, and you ask them where's all the water, oh well, we dumped it actually, because it was legal. And they can never be held to account. We're pretty well sure that's what's happening anyway, obviously, because the world has been lulled into lethal complacency. In the wake of the meltdown incident, as if it just deserves 4 words, not even a sentence, not even a paragraph, just not even a sentence, just a blah. Everybody got their vest on, got your face mask on, your paper face mask, let's roll. Fukushima water release, what we know. These people are protesting tritium. Like, if you're going to protest, at least protest something sensible. You got all the models. This is Neptunium-239 dispersal covering the planet after 20 days, which, by the way, decays to plutonium. This is the Xenon-133 model based on 20 days. Why not protest that? Oh. This is the plutonium dispersal covering the planet in 20 days. Oh. This is the cesium iodine model from NOAA, based on 40 days when that model stops. Why not use that one? Oh, this is fun. My God, how much shit do I actually have? So you see these little yellow spots, that's 2023. So just work your mind. There's nothing at the plant. Nothing got out. But, I screwed that up, my apologies. But this year they're moving people. Now, red is a nuclear wasteland. They call it no-go zone, bless their hearts. But it's actually a nuclear wasteland. The whitest spots they opened last year, so you can bring your children in here. You can't cross the street or anything when you get there. You got to go in your house. You can't go walking around your neighborhood. You can't go playing catch ball with your kid in the garden. Should be arrested for child abuse for bringing your kid. But they actually open up this place here and that place there, this place and this place in the nuclear wasteland this year. But nothing got out, so it's all imaginary, apparently. As they call it, difficult to return zones. These are nuclear wastelands, not difficult to return zones. These are nuclear wastelands. So imagine you're in your house right here. These are little tiny spots, right? But you can go back into your house and you're surrounded by airborne radiation of levels you can't even comprehend. I can barely comprehend the real numbers. They're going to be 600 times whatever the official number is, because you got to include all the isotopes. Now those places, like this, in some of those places they're still growing food, including 2 miles away from the nuclear meltdown, and right alongside of millions of 1-ton bags of radiation. And all of those spots over there are prefectures, and they're the big ones, which is about half the country. in volume-wise and production-wise. And you're talking about 5 billion pounds of rice from a nuclear wasteland each year being shipped worldwide on top of that. And to grow it right alongside of it and harvest it, I can never reconcile that picture. And there's quite a few of these types of pictures, and these are from the medias. It's really difficult for me to reconcile that. How did we ever get to that stage right there? Because the minute we got to this stage right here where that was considered acceptable was the minute that the nuclear industry turned against you on a real public hateful way. So they've turned against you. They don't care about you. They don't care about your loved ones or anybody else. When the nuclear meltdown happened, they weren't asking for nuclear scientists.
Result. If a problem later occurs, they can say, well, the people on site, the workers made their own arbitrary decision to do this. It's not our fault. Another example, immediately after the first hydrogen explosion, TEPCO gave out an order a request to all of these labor dispatching companies, and they said, send us people who don't mind dying.
Send us people who don't mind dying because there's so much tritium? No, Dana, geez, get with the program. So let's look at some evidence from early in the days to try to orient you on the significance of this event and the heartache that is over the next 2 days. You're going to implement Operation Cover-Up, where now they're going to be able to say, and they can dump whatever they want into the ocean because nobody's, the official cover story becomes the official story. And they're just going to punch this right through. There's nothing you can do about it because no one's going to speak up, right? It's just, in reality, it's just me. Which is pretty friggin' depressing. And I have very mixed feelings over the next couple of days about this. This is a moment in history that everybody will look back on and hate and despise us for it because we didn't stop it. The cover story, right? We didn't put an end to it, I should say. Major source of ocean contamination from Fukushima not revealed. Nuclear waste exit from the cracks in the reactor buildings. Let's check the buildings for cracks first before we go any further. Yeah, there's a few cracks there, that's true. You got a good point. And then it goes into the Pacific. Never enters the groundwater, flows directly through the ground. Of course it enters the groundwater. Now, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags officially in 2016. They had 150,000 sites like this. But we've heard other versions, I'll play one of them for you, of 60 million one-ton bags. And we're going to use the 30 million one-ton bags to avoid any controversies. So 30 million one-ton bags is equal to 30 million one-ton pickup trucks. So you put them bumper to bumper, that's 5 rows of traffic around the entire planet.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence. So
let me play that one more time. 60 million.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence. So
Thanks a lot, James. Operation lobotomy. That's so fucking funny, man. That's what a great one-liner, basically, isn't it? How fucking true is that statement? Operation lobotomy. Oh my God, man. I almost lost my sight that time from laughing. Jeez. Oh, we got a race in our poll here tonight, folks. 50%, so 13 votes says no. You shouldn't put it in a mine shaft. Calm down, Charlie must have ran into ghost accounts, but look at it. Stuck right there. That cracks me up. Why couldn't you put it in a mine shaft? What do you mean, no? You can call in at, I'll put up the phone number for whoever owns all those ghost accounts. Give us a call. We'd love to hear that one. 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Call in, tell us why you're spamming me with no votes. I mean, there's no reason you can't put it in a mine shaft. Why couldn't you put it in a mine shaft? Oh, because it doesn't exist? Maybe that's it. I haven't read the comments, so I don't know. But you got 30 million one-ton bags. So you're getting a nasty dose if you're walking around on those bags, folks. More journalists tour Fukushima parking lot area is too contaminated, the parking lot of the nuclear meltdown. Told to stay on metal plates so radiation is shielded a little bit. More reactor number 2. If it catches fire, all bets are off. That's December the 19th, for goodness sakes. Says physicist on March the 14th, rather. The NRC now emits it burned continuously for several days. Reactor 2 actually liquefied. That's such a great headline. I got to put that over my other pile. So whoever's voting no, go down and mark in all of these bags, all of them, that Dana is wrong. And when you finish, let me know and I'll quit. Radioactive fish at 400% government limits found 200 kilometers inland. It was found further. It was found in North America everywhere you went. Warning, the worst is yet to come in Fukushima. Deep underneath the nuclear disease factory, a massive pool of contamination is believed to be heading towards the Pacific Ocean. Because there was an aquifer underneath it. They built it that way on purpose. So the China sins would end up in the aquifer, right? And so this is the strangest picture you'll ever see. They picked up just endless amounts of one-ton bags, including in the farmland, but they never stopped growing food, never stopped harvesting it. And then they just left the bags right where they were too. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the U.S. Like, you know, imagine you got to go down and count the 30 million one-ton bags. That's your job, and your children's job, and their children's job, and their children's job is to eventually count all the 30 million one-ton bags. Yeah, it's going to take you a few hundred years, but you can do it. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the U.S., but nothing got out, Dana. Yeah, there's 30 million one-ton bags. That's not very much, Dana. Come on, be realistic. Can you put the 30 million one-ton bags down in mine shafts too while you're at it? Dust monitoring fallout investigations are evidently fake. The dust monitoring and fallout, and posted by Minnesota City Council, where we've seen 20 million becquerels, atomic decays per second, per kilogram, and there's 1,000 kilograms in each of these bags. Crackdown. Japan's professor arrests extremely unjust and publicly opposed the burning of dirty bombs, radioactive debris. There's 1 billion tons down there that are burnt, radioactive debris, with 30 million one-ton bags. 300 times more radiation released into the atmosphere from burning dirty bombs than claimed by the government. And this is such a strange story where they took radioactive debris from Fukushima nuclear meltdown, trucked it to other prefectures, and burnt it in the incinerators. And some of these places, one in particular, there was 3 in workers at garbage dump incinerator, getting minimum wage. 3 workers had heart attacks on the same day, which is a adverse side effect from anthropogenic man-made radiation for some reason. Who's to blame for radioactive fish? TEPCO denies the cesium contamination is from Fukushima. Let's have a look at Fukushima. See how bad it actually is. Oh, that's bad, man. That's bad, Dana. I know, right? And 30 million one-ton bags. Nothing got out, though, apparently. 400 tons a day of toxic water is entering the Pacific, but nothing got out. You got 3,000 Geiger counters in the middle of a nuclear wasteland surrounded by millions of one-ton bags, but nothing shows up on the Geiger counter. 3,000 of them in just one city, Fukushima City alone, to manipulate people to stay in there. Extremely malicious. That's how you would typically describe any pro-nuclear on the planet. Hundreds of tons of radioactive waste found over 500 kilometers from Fukushima near Japan's biggest lake. Hundreds of tons of radioactive waste by their biggest freshwater lake. No, the nuclear industry hates your fucking guts. They hate you. They don't need to know you. They just hate you. And for some way to best way to get you is through your farms and your fresh water. And they've been at this for 80 years. It's just normal work for them. This is just a normal fucking day for them. Highly radioactive lake is built up in the depths of Fukushima. You got 30 million one-ton bags. Look at it. 30 million. That's just one of 150,000 sites. Nothing got out though, Dave. Let's be honest. Nothing got out. Because that's the official story. Is nothing got out. I'm showing you something a little bit different, right? Maybe get you pause and think for a bit. Fukushima is having a bigger effect on the environment than we expected. We don't know what's happening. The radioactive releases from the plant are spiking. This is 2013, this year. Worrisome problem. Well, it's a chain reaction, and it's perpetually producing fallout. That might never stop for millions of years. And the radiation won't stop pulsing energy for millions of years. And the idea of picking up the bags is so the farmers can come back and start growing food. But you can't decontaminate by picking up millions of one-ton bags. And because that's only 3% of the land. Because you can't, it's just the communities where they want people to eventually move back into, they done that. And the farmer fields. And as soon as you stop looking, by the way, they stop doing it. Mind-boggling cesium levels. Of course, every time you heard the word cesium, remember the reactors are running on uranium and plutonium. And you can't have cesium without 600 other fission products. Health ministry is in denial. They forced us to forget everything. They forced everybody to surrender to nuclear industry. Government radiation levels are complete fiction. Mass media is the biggest criminal. And that's a great statement, isn't it? Isn't that a fantastic statement? But there was, and I'm showing it to you, for the first couple of years, there was descending voices. And so they bought up all of those medias. I know that might sound crazy to you, but they bought up all those medias. And anybody that wouldn't play ball got deep sick, so to speak. Holy shit, I'm some thirsty night. I got no idea what that's about. Like I had a whole bunch of fucking salt or something. Oh, man. Why don't you show us a picture of the 1,000 tanks? You know what I'm surprised is they didn't say they had 10,000 tanks. TEPCO uses radioactive water from number 5 and reactor 6 to spray throughout the Fukushima plant. That's a great idea. Let's take a big shitload of dirty bombs and spray it on everything. 100 tons of radioactive water a day. You haven't really seen evil until you look at the nuclear industry. That's when you start realizing, holy shit, we live in a sadistic friggin' dimension. So nothing got out except for the 30 million one-ton bags and massive plumes that covered the entire planet in radiation and decades of reactor cores in the fuel pools from 8 of them. And the common spent fuel pool and reactor 6 fuel pool, by the looks of the documentation we have, could also be gone. And we assume it's gone because the evidence is pretty stunning. Tokyo, there's up to 300,000 becquerels, atomic decays, physical atoms, pulsing energy every second per square meter. And this is also home to the world's largest drinking water reservoir of its kind, built to supply 36 million people in Tokyo. So if you think I'm wrong, go down and mark on all of these bags. Dana is full of shit. So whoever's orchestrating this, the poll for voting down the poll, because there's zero possibility. When was the last time we seen 14 people vote opposite in our poll? In almost 500 videos, we've never seen that. Nothing near it. This is the most extreme we ever seen. And it's like they're panicking, right? No, sure, nobody watches my freaking videos. I don't know why they're putting so much interest in me, for goodness sakes. There's 25 people. I got 22 likes. Really? Am I a threat to the nuclear industry? I don't understand why they're putting all that energy into spamming my video. I didn't realize it was such a touchy subject. Jeez. So, should we also put 30 million one-ton bags in the mine shaft with the water that is allegedly in the tanks, the tritium? Tritium water, but we got 30 million one-ton bags. How does that work? The bags are not full of tritium, by the way. Enormous spread of radiation, the economists, the piece of shit economists, levels are so high in the hills of Lydia that the locals dare not go outside, near them. 150,000 microsieverts outside officials' home. You're talking about massive airborne radiation. It's so far away from the meltdowns, I got no concept of why they're measuring it in millisieverts. Well, because if they measure it in becquerels, like the other stuff we looked at, see, microsieverts and millisieverts are used to manipulate the numbers. So 150 millisieverts sounds a lot better than 150,000 microsieverts. And 150,000 microsieverts sounds a lot better than 300 million becquerels per square meter. That's the pump station down on the seaside. And so you see the green regions that's falling off the pumps. You know what that region is? That's the bind with the fuel particulates. And even the pump houses or the pump stations at the wharfage is also covered in that green region. It's a really this is down. Is this 5 and 6 pump house or pumping station? It is so. Look at that. So that's quite a ways away from the reactors. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Rain caused 130 schools in Korea to close, yet rain in California had 10 times more radioactivity. So they closed 130 schools in South Korea, but South Korea is saying there was never no fallout. And is attacking anybody who protests right now. The current administration is so pro-nuclear, they forget that they're supposed to be a human too. Local official radioactive forest is a permanent risk because you can't clean up the forest, and they should be cut down. And every gust of wind showers radioactive particles, not just cesium. When you hear the word cesium, we should have in the near future, there's going to be a go punch a nuclear scientist in the fucking mouth day. Worldwide, I guarantee it. You mark my fucking words, excuse the language. In the future, there's going to be a day where anybody on the planet is going to be allowed to punch a nuclear academic or scientist or student in the fucking mouth when they see him. They're going to have to do it legally, too, in the near future after that. It's a patriotic duty to punch a nuclear scientist right in the fucking mouth. That day is coming. They'd be here right now if the world woke up, I can guarantee you that. Extremely regrettable. Fukushima workers report dumping radioactive waste from the beginning. 2013. Well, the workers are the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants that don't speak the language. It's not nuclear academics or nuclear scientists. They're not going to Fukushima Prefecture, let alone Fukushima plant. They're getting the greenhouse ready with hundreds of one-ton bags of radiation. What a stupid country. Radiation now tripled maze level in Soma Nida River, double for the Mano River. Yeah, nothing got out though, Dan. There's only 2.2 grams of tritium, you fucking lawyer. Dumping the Fukushima radioactive water is the government's only solution. And the risk of damaging the effects, well, it's not their solution. They can't stop it. They can't contain it. They can't control it. The homeless don't know what they're doing, see? If you put a nuclear scientist and academics, and nuclear students, and nuclear universities, might come up with a few solutions, but they didn't. Risk of damaging the effects from the toxic discharges. Even if fully implemented, 300 tons of contaminated groundwater, which is being very polite, will still flow into the Pacific every day. Wait a second, they said nothing got out. Freelance journalists in Japan, Fukushima government is dumping tons of radioactive mud from decontamination into the rivers at night. I bet you I got 500 headlines like that with different dates on it over many years. Everybody got their paper suits on it? Let's roll. Japan cleanup denounced a disgrace and absolutely irresponsible. The company that built all 6 Fukushima reactor buildings is leading the decontamination. Psst. Hey, mister, you want to buy a big 1-ton bag of dirty bombs? What? What? New government report. No answer for how radioactive material leaked from the reactors. Jeez. Come on, man. They got no idea why the radiation got out of the reactors. I see their point. How the frick could radiation get out of something that don't exist anymore? It's already gone. Is that the punchline? I don't know. I'm confused. I'm asking. I'm not trying to be smart. I'm trying to get to the point of it. I'm trying to understand. Yeah. Well, the bags were only meant to last for a little tiny couple of years at most. And they're porous, so the water runs right through it and the radiation runs right out of it. They are turning the ground into quicksand at the Fukushima plant. The engineers warned the reactor units may topple. Oh, come on, that's a little bit extreme. They can't topple, there's nothing left. Free houses for pregnant women, by the way. It's one of my favorite headlines. We got so many favorite headlines, but that's definitely one of my favorite ones. That's some serious evil shit right there. Well, if you're pregnant, we'll give you a free house. No, the radiation's in the bags. Don't worry about that. The kids can play outside. All-time high radiation levels in the wells at the Fukushima plant. So they dug 100 wells. That's the water they were pumping up to get samples, and then they would put it into the tanks. That's why the tanks were actually built. Not for the filtration, the fabled filtration, the non-filtration system. Fukushima plant 40 meters from the Pacific, 1.1 billion becquerels a cubic meter of strontium-90. What year is this? 2013 was still, December. So, because strontium-90 peaks after about 1,000 days, and stays peaked, which is 100 to 1 ratio of cesium-137. There's 100 strontium-90 for every cesium-131 produced, or cesium-137 produced, after 1,000 days, and it stays that way for tens of thousands of days. I can't remember, 40, 50, 60,000 days or something. Yay. So, I mean, you're talking about everywhere. And so there's a community down there. This is uphill. So when it rains, it all washes down into the drinking table and the water in the community. The evaporation, the morning dew, and everything else liberates it back into the environment. And droughts and stuff like that. When the ground, like they're in a heat wave down there right now in Japan. And so the ground drying means you got to liberate all the radiation that's in the soil because the dust will start blowing again, see? If you have a fire, you can't destroy it. All you could do is liberate it from wherever it's caught up in. It just burns and now it floats free and looks for a victim. And by the way, top cancer doctor, nuclear radiation, the most carcinogenic thing that exists. The most carcinogenic thing that exists. Get your 1-ton bags. Get your dirty bombs. I'm always blown away, and I've been doing this for years and years and years and years and years and years. And oh God, I've been doing this for years. But I'm still never. I don't get bored. It's just like it's freaking every day is like another disaster. But when you see something like this, nice high quality pictures, it really brings it home for me. It's hard to comprehend it because you see so much sometimes. But for me, when I'll give you an example because I'm definitely a weirdo. So I'll be sitting here getting the show ready and I'll start zooming in on it and I'll start imagining people writing on it, Dana is wrong on every one of them bags. And then I'll pee myself a little bit. I'll go get a cup of tea, take a pee. Fukushima highly radioactive water flowing into the Pacific Ocean. Wait a second, they said nothing got out, Dana. Except for the 30 million 1-ton bags that we know about. And everything else that goes with it, the billion tons they burnt in the incinerators across the entire country. Why would you put, like whoever walks around there is getting brutal doses. So it's homeless and the destitute and victims of society. Total estimated cesium releases into the air is triple the amount published 2 months ago. Well, none of them are willing to use the numbers from the actual buildings. We've never seen a single study where they used the numbers from the buildings, right? They've never ever used the fuel pools. They never ever used the reactor core in these models or these predictions, right? They've always pretended that this is not real. And they don't care about anything, including themselves. And the industry shouldn't be allowed to sabotage the future of humanity and the 8 million species. Can we really sit in silence and let that happen? I know the people that support me and that are here regularly don't for a second believe that that's acceptable. It's a very difficult subject. I'm always a little bit shocked when somebody watches any of my video, comes back and watches another video, because the information is so hideous, it's so frightening, it's so surreal, it's so monstrous. It's, like, you know, saying there's nothing gotten out is not wicked or bad or wrong or immoral or sinful or foul or ungodly or dishonorable or corrupt or depraved or degenerate. It's just evil. It's just evil to deny it. It's malicious. There's no maybes. There's shocking that the fuel is damaged in 2 of the pools. We check them, yeah, well, yeah, they're damaged and a few other things. Oh no, wait a second, they're missing, for goodness sakes. like the people, they're missing. 150 billion becquerels cubic meter at Unit 3. Let's check it out. Well, the fuel pools and reactor cores are actually gone. So you can't say the fuel pools, this is 2013 they're claiming, but this is 2012. No, 2013. There's nothing left. So to say the fuel pools is completely dishonest, right? The average person in Seattle was breathing in 10 hot radioactive particles a day during April. Oh, that's scumbag Arnie Gunnarsson, trash man, crazy. That what he done to people was just, there's no reason to be that evil, though. He can get a real job. He doesn't need to be this evil. So they hate us, is right? That's why they do that stuff, I guess. I'm asking, because I can't comprehend why they hate us so much. It's so weird that, and they're the people in the media. And they absolutely, and they're not shy about it either. They hate our guts. That's the tsunami coming in. Let's keep it rolling here. We're getting there. We're not too far away. We're a little bit, but we're not very far away, all things considered. Melted core cracked the containment vessel. There really isn't any containment. Once again, let's refer to the documentation. Yeah. Well, the containment's not there. Unless a UFO came by and snatched it. I wonder why they had to pick up 30 million one-ton bags if everything is okay. 76 trillion becquerels of plutonium-239 released from Fukushima, which is 23,000 times higher than the previous announcement. The numbers that I got, they're official numbers. When we done the equation on it, don't quote me, but it was over 21,000 pounds. Excuse me. Let me bring up the calculator for that number right there, and I'll explain what that number actually works out to in grams. And grams. So, what was the number again, Dana? Hang on. 76 trillion. Ho ho! 76 trillion. That's 76 billion, Dana. 76 trillion. Keep with the friggin' program. Okay, so 76 trillion divided by 36 billion. 37 billion. 37 billion is a curry. Okay, that equals there. Now divide that by 120 curries, would be a gram of cesium, for instance. So that's 17 grams. So that's less than an ounce. But the actual numbers was 21 million pounds of plutonium. And that's like lowballing the numbers. So 17 grams is 76 trillion becquerels. And that a single atom of plutonium can cause a significant autoimmune illness to manifest in increments over time. And a large amount of it, consuming it and sequestering it in your body, will compromise your immune system because your body is working double time to repair the damage every second created by the pulse almost at the speed of light from the plutonium or any of the gammas, alphas, neutrons, or betas. So this is particularly important for insects and small mammals and animals and birds in the forest, for instance, everything is getting full body X-rays on top of that. The gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas, because they don't mix together. And they create this braking effect at high speeds of almost the speed of light. So you got two entities like gammas and alphas almost at the speed of light, pulsing energy. And when they hit each other, they change direction. They don't mingle. And that effect is a braking effect, but it causes a unique effect that the scumbag scientists recognize as X-rays. And we're talking whole body X-rays. So when you got a radioactive fallout in the forest, think of a snowstorm, and then pretend that it's invisible. Now you're talking radiation. And think about a snowstorm, how close the snowflakes are. This stuff, radiation itself, can pulse 50 or 60 feet. So when it's so close together, you got the pulses creating even more vicious X-ray effect in your forest. And so the bacteria and the fungus, the biota, the species in the break down the foliage and the litter in the forest, but also the insects and the birds in particular become sterilized because you're getting this full body X-ray every second. But the majority of them can't perceive it. You can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or perceive it. 200 trillion becquerels of tritium every year, Canadian reactors. No, the one in New Brunswick in Canada is releasing 16,400,000 trillion becquerels a year legally. That's just one of the reactors in Canada. We're talking about the one in Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick, up in the Bay of Fundy, where they got a stupid 50-foot tide exchange. I dove that bay for years commercially. I quit. It's like you're driving a jet ski underwater all day. And all the boat can do is follow your bubbles, right? And if you go down for a couple of minutes, when you come back up, you're a mile away from where you got in the water. Very dangerous. And so I would guide myself around like rock piles, and then I would land on my feet wherever the rock piles, because then you like a little eddy, and that's where I would work. I was doing food harvesting and a little bit of poaching at that time, where not in a bad way, just for myself for food. Most don't know, but reactor 1 melted down in 5 hours. There's an understatement, most don't know. We almost lost 1/3 of the nation due to Fukushima. Reactor 3 melted earlier than reported. Investigation how such massive amounts of radioactive substances were released. You don't need an investigation, you just need to be honest. Reactor 4 doesn't exist, and Reactor 3 doesn't exist. And Reactor 1 and 2 had the same thing, but they didn't visually be as stunning. And so I used these two. Like, this is desperation. What I'm doing here, and the research that I'm doing, this is desperation for the world to get their act together. This is your last chance, planet Earth, to get it together. And we're doing everything we can. It's relentless, and these shows, while they might not seem like a lot, it's a stupid amount of work. And I love every second of it. I'm just absolutely thrilled that I can contribute anything to make this planet a bit better, and to try to help the species, to give them a bit of a fighting chance against this wicked nuclear. The nuclear industry is such a hateful industry, right? I haven't worked out why they're so hateful. I haven't put a lot of effort into it, but it must go back 80 years or something. But anyway, if you don't believe me, go down and mark on all of these bags. Their data is stupid. Radiation in Fukushima groundwater skyrocketed 3,500 plus times over the weekend. 2013, right? 5 meters from the Pacific. Nothing being done to stop it flowing into the sea because it's a lethal dose. That's why there's 150,000 sites like that in just 3% of the land of the Fukushima prefecture itself. Over 1,000 nuclear workers have internal radiation, 10,000 counts per minute. And so, well, wait a second, Dana. That can't be true because they have paper suits on. Yeah, but what you don't realize is paper suits can't protect you at a meltdown. So it's not workers, it's over 1,000 homeless and destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language. 15 quadrillion becquerels of radioactive substance suspected in the trench. This is the lethal doses we're talking about there. It's no-go zone in overdrive. When you see these tarps, that's millions and millions of one-ton bags of radiation. Estimated 276 quadrillion becquerels of cesium-137 entered the Fukushima basements. Whenever you hear cesium-137, it's such a dishonest... it's weaponized against you, right? And you'll see this... If you start going out and aggregating academic studies, you're going to read it. If you're like me where you read that stuff every day, it'll drive you crazy because you know how dishonest... And it's a bad isotope. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's completely dishonest, and proportionally, there's infinitely more of the nasty isotopes like curium fission, uranium fission, plutonium fissions, etc., etc. And there's lots of cesium, lots of other things, lots of, lots of xenon, for instance. There's lots of nasty isotopes. But we see that used, that's actually weaponized against you. Core on the floor outside the reactor vessels. Huh? That would explain why there's 30 million one-ton bags, Dana. Maybe. Well, the core is not on the floor at reactor 3 and 4 because those buildings are gone. There's nothing left. The reactor cores and the fuel pools are at the top of the building, not at the bottom of the building. U.S. West Coast will be hard hit by Fukushima. North Pacific Gyro is transporting radioactive materials to America. Nearly 5,000 nuclear plant workers suffering internal radiation exposures. Well, gee, Data, didn't they have paper suits on? Yeah, I do believe they did. It doesn't work. Doesn't stop you from getting paint on your clothes. It ain't going to stop radiation. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light. Your paper suit needs to be at least 6 feet thick for that to try to work. But anyway, if you think I'm wrong, go down and mark on all of those bags. Dana is wrong. I'm sure TEPCO will pay you for it, actually. Mysterious reddish radioactive substance detected 180 kilometers from Fukushima Daiichi. Alpha particles at 200 counts per minute. Mysterious, yeah. There's anything mysterious anymore is the truth. Mysterious black substance at 1 million becquerels a kilogram of cesium. Cesium. All over minima soma. Well, it's actually 20,000 becquerels a kilogram. 20 million becquerels per kilogram, rather. Nobody should ever be in Minnesota, minima soma, ever again. But they are. Especially, they seem really insistent on bringing the kids into the nuclear wasteland because the community can't be a community without the kids in it, right? And the spammers are gone crazy tonight. Look at this. Oh. Let's check out the poll. The spammers are gone batshit lunatic. They finally lost their minds. That's pretty desperate, eh? Could the Japanese engineers put Fukushima Wastewater that the International Atomic Energy Agency says is so fucking safe, you can swim in it, you can drink it. Why not put it in the mine shaft? That makes more sense. You don't have to wait 40 years to dump it into the ocean because you could have an earthquake in the next 40 years. Probably never thought of that, did you? So you put it all in the mine shaft right away, problem fucking solved. And you can use the same trucks you're transporting 30 million one-ton bags with. They're already radioactive. What's the big whoop whoop? Unless you're finally ran out of the homeless, I suppose that could be a reason. I never thought about that. That's probably what's going on. But that's really interesting that they're here spamming me in desperation. We sold another 2 Calm Down Charlie t-shirts last night. That's 87. I do believe we're going to finally hit 100 for a T-shirt. That's going to be quite the day. And you can buy Charlie's, Calm Down Charlie's T-shirts. I'll show them to you. That's our best seller. How weird is that? So, Calm Down Charlie T-shirts. There's two different types. But the $26 one, that seems to be the one that's really selling. We sold probably a dozen of the long sleeve ones. And they come in different colors and different sizes. And this comes in all kinds of sizes. Awesome. And the colors, you're only limited to how many colors you get, unfortunately. But Yoshida Mashada, Tokyo Bell, Chicago Division, also known as Calm Down Charlie, has been stalking me for over 10 years. Some of his famous one-liners are, yo, scammer, yo, filthy liar, yo, sick bastard. These are one of my favorite ones, you sick bastards. And there's pictures front and back. On the front, we got Anna Coren, ABC Cecilia Vega, BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, CBC Seth Dorn, which is Senator's son, pretending they're in the building to your left. And so that's who they should be calling filthy liar, scammers, and sick bastards. Not me. I'm the good guy. They're the bad guys. And so officially now we sold 87 of Charlie's shirts. But you can also get Fukushima Meltdown and Extinction Event, an Ellie event, or I Love Nuclear, 93,000 miles away. You got jackets, we got Save the Children, Ban Nuclear Power t-shirts. Very powerful. It's a very powerful t-shirt, by the way. Let me bring it up for you. Save the Children, and on the back of it, it's hard to imagine something much more frightening than 5-year-olds marching off to irradiated school playgrounds with Geiger counters strapped to their chest. And this one, look at this one, comes in, they like me, I guess. Look at all the colors it comes in, wow. About friggin' time you gave me a break. And you Save the Children, Ban Nuclear Power. These are Save the Whales, Ban Nuclear Power. Save the Insects, Ban Nuclear Power. But of course, the biggest seller, well, I guess when I look back on it, doesn't surprise me, is the Calm Down Charlie Classic Crewnet Comfort Shirt. Officially, we've sold 87. That's pretty special. I really appreciate it to everybody that bought one. And we're almost finished up here. Let me see what we got left here. Oh, we're still 5, 10, 15, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. Oh, still got a little running to do here. Let's get busy. Military units severely contaminated when Fukushima Unit 3 exploded. Let me check to see if Unit 3 really exploded. Oh, yeah, that's definitely exploded. 30 million one-ton bags, so nothing got out, did it? New breaches at Fukushima flowing to the Pacific. Flowing, that's the proper word, isn't it? And most likely radioactive particles scattered on the ground by the explosion. Already 60 billion going directly into the ocean every day. It's infinitely more than that, and that's a stunning number. Well, get used to radioactive food because the world is not trying to stop the madness. By Fukushima is worse than Chernobyl, now the truth is coming out. 72,000 times worse than Hiroshima. No. It's way friggin' worse than 72,000 times, which is nasty, obviously. It's worse than all the nuclear bombs combined by orders of magnitude. International Atomic Energy Agency today admitted there's no such thing as a safe level of radiation, and that the standards are based on benefits, not safety. Let me go back to that one. So this is the strangest statement imaginable. So the International Atomic Energy Agency is based on natural, not man-made radiation. That's their standards. Can you comprehend the significance of that if you're not familiar with the subject? If you're new here? So they're not, the International Atomic Energy Agency standards are not based on actual radiation from reactors. They're based on harmless, stupid, indigenous, everyday background, pointless emitters, which everything's already acclimated to through genetic superior selection. That's why we exist in such harmony. It's made we're talking about stardust, natural. So why are anybody? Well, because the media is weaponized the International Atomic Energy Agency against common sense and reality and the species. They actually weaponize it against us. And unless we put a stop to it by speaking out, and the minute you get 1,000 people speak out on this subject that articulate it a little bit, and you can be pretty quick from my stuff, and we get better at telling the story every day. And we take great pride in what we do here. It's, and I'm, getting better at the story every day. And this hurts my feelings when I see them in farmland with the intentions of continuing to produce food from the nuclear wasteland. Because that means people get sick and die and have terrible diseases that their families are crippled with trying to help their loved ones. And so the madness is not lost upon me, or you if you're watching this stuff. 40% of the Fukushima visitors show internal exposure. That the International Atomic Energy Agency's standards are based on natural instead of man-made. A billion people should come out and scream at them for that one. Government simulation shows radioactive plume of Krypton-85, which hit North America, by the way. We don't see that model too often. Over Tokyo, March the 15th, with number 3, with the MOX exploded. Well, it's not going to be just Krypton-85 and Xenon-133. How is it? The mixed oxide fuel, I mean, the emission, the reason this stuff is in the bag is because it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. That's why it's in those, they're picking up, putting in the bag. You know what they're doing with the bag today? Because everybody stopped paying attention. Is they brought it to the nuclear wasteland, 14 million of them. They cut them open and are growing food in it for consumption. So if that doesn't scream, go fuck yourself out to you, what actually does, I wonder? If that doesn't make you rebel up and stand tall and fight back, what will? What do you really need? Because I'll find it for you. Fukushima radioactivity at 40 billion becquerels a kilogram. Large black puddles of fallout along the roadside might well be from inside the failed fuel rods. Well, if you're talking 40 billion becquerels a kilogram, that's from the fuel rods. Fucking of course it is. Excuse my Canadian. People inhaled up to 85,000 becquerels of radioactivity in just the first 4 hours. And they're only talking about iodine-131. For every iodine-131, there's going to be 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129. And that the iodine-130, and many, many more, but the iodine-132 and iodine-133 deionize and radiate the thyroid glands of all the species in kids and humans 9 times more effective than the 131, which is unbelievably effective. It's catastrophically so. But because, we're talking about so much that the thyroid glands, it aggregates everywhere else too, not just the thyroid. All gammas will end up in the thyroid, not just iodine. And so the 132, 133, because there's such a prolific amount of it, it saturates the thyroid glands, which are immediately now and forever are producing radioactive hormones. And they get stored in your pituitary gland, which is in your brain. And both of these are the functions of your body. These are the bots which is the hormones. Consider them as bots which goes out and dictates all your organs and everything else, the functions. And so if you're sending them radioactive hormones, and you are, and then think about, this is catastrophic for humans, but how catastrophic is it going to be for the species, particularly the small ones? And so when you start breaking the food chain everywhere, you start to see the effects we're noticing today. And they're putting it down in trenches, which is an indication of how powerful this particular 1 ton bags actually are. They're very high, and so they actually have to put this underground because they're emitting so much deadly radiation. But in order to do that, many, many homeless have to be sacrificed to finish that job. Study: Fukushima released 100 quadrillion becquerels of cesium into the atmosphere in just one day, equal to Chernobyl's total releases. Chernobyl was a single small graphite reactor. Fukushima, each of them were massive. There's 4 of them. And there was 8 fuel pools, and each fuel pool had about 6 reactor cores into it, and all of them were lost. And the numbers we're talking about, and Japan was pure uranium, pure plutonium. And then reactor 3 at Japan, Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Disease Factory, was the MOX fuel, the hideous MOX fuel. So was the fuel pools. And so you're talking 12 reactor cores in each building, basically. And we have the documentation showing the fuel pools were stuffed. And the reason there's that much there is because you don't have a repository. Well, you don't have one anywhere worldwide. And so the fuel pools, same as in America, are stuffed. And it's a planet event, a planetary extinction level event is playing out. And it plays out in one way in slow motion, but as you break up the food chain, it accelerates. And because it's so subtle that over 12 years, there never was that many birds, there never was that many whales, there never was that many friends or family. Damaged fuel rods are cracked, leaking radioactive gases in Fukushima Unit 4 fuel pool, 2013. Well, let's check reactor 4 fuel pool, see how bad it is. Oh, goodness me, it doesn't even exist. Because the buildings were 190 feet tall. But I mean, look at the debris hanging out. There is nothing there. And that hole you see up there, that's the shaft that went all the way to the top of the building where they would lower the cast down to the special transport trucks that would carry the 50-ton cast to the common spin fuel pool site, where it was held in water again for another decade or more. Yeah, got everything in 1 ton bags. Yeah, okay. Now TEPCO, because we harassed them for years, actually came out for a while and claimed they burned 7,000 paper suits every day. Because I was asking, what are they doing with all the radioactive paper suits? You must have millions and millions and millions of them. And no, we burned 7,000 every day, Dana. 300,000 becquerels a square meter radioactive iodine deposit in areas near Tokyo before the end of March. And they're only including, again, the iodine 131, which is a completely dishonest thing to do, eh? Out for riding your bicycle, going past 1 ton bags of radiation. That community should be abandoned permanently. So they sent in the homeless and they power sprayed the sidewalks and the front of the buildings and said, have a nice day. Every house in Fukushima City and Koriyama City, which is 300,000 people, every house in those cities, every apartment, every store, every business is entitled to be decommissioned or decontaminated. But you can't decontaminate a house in a nuclear wasteland. It just simply can't be done. Because it's airborne, see? That's why there's 30 million 1 ton bags, which is just 3% of what of the land. It's only 3% of what you should have picked up. And even then, you can't do the job, right? It's a good start, though, but you can't. Because you're not trying to stop the reactor meltdown, right? You got a homeless there. Water with nuclear fuel coming up from the ocean floor off Fukushima coast. 156 quadrillion cesium once in basements. double Chernobyls, close to the total fallout from every atomic bomb test in history. Maybe outputting from seeps in the seafloor. He said, I don't know. It was actually the fuel assemblies landed in the ocean. They actually cemented the whole ocean front in front of Fukushima. They didn't abandon these shops because of tritium. 2,000 kilometers from Fukushima, the ocean is contaminated, highly contaminated with marine snow, covering the seafloor at least 2,000 kilometers away. That's called fallout, isn't it? Typical completes covering the seafloor with layers of cement mix. They used more coating used at reactor 5 and 6 than reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 combined. So 5 and 6 were severely compromised, weren't they? I don't know what. This is the zombie picture where everybody's in a different direction with paper suits, little bags in their hands. One of them, both of their feet are off the ground. Stay on your steel plates. Be a team player. When the whistle blows, everybody run back to the bus. Some people are not being given food, have no place to go. We always need workers. Some co-workers are really violent. They use violence. We're not to cause any trouble while around reactor 3, which is known as the Medusa. Almost through. So far, so good. Oh. KPFA in Japan. I've learned over 800 people have disappeared from Fukushima, may have been killed or died during the work. Hey, you want a cheap car? I'll get you a cheap car. You know, because there's so much tritium released, right? It's okay. You can trust TEPCO, can't you? Forbes is outrageous. The homeless people are being sold to companies and put to work at Fukushima. TEPCO raises the safe exposure limits 500 times the original level to 100,000 counts per minute. From 180 counts per minute, I generally got 200 plus counts per minute in my home, for God's sakes. So go down and mark all of these bags. Dana's just full of bullshit. Mentally disabled are working at Fukushima Daiichi. Homeless are treated like disposable people. Yeah, the nuclear industry hates people. And they can boss around the homeless pretty easy, and they do. Mentally handicapped are working at Fukushima, not academics, and they're given worse suits than, well, they're given second-hand suits than the homeless. TEPCO began coating the seafloor with cement mixture. Almost there. Radioactive particles on the seafloor at over 1,000 times normal level, 20 kilometers from the plant. Nothing got out there, yeah? That's why you abandoned all those communities, is it? Radiation forecasts in Japan kept secret to avoid panic in the whole of society. If nothing got out, what the fuck am I looking at? Extreme contamination found in trenches of Fukushima. Cesium at 2 billion becquerels a liter. Millions of times above the limits. 2 billion here, quadrillion there. Just a normal day in a nuclear wasteland. Coming to a neighborhood near you soon enough in grocery shelves. I'm worried about the pressure forcing the radioactive water back up through the cracks in the ground. That's happening. The China syndrome is real. There's 6 steam vents coming out of the ground at 10 sieverts an hour in each of them. That's a lethal dose immediately. You see steam coming out of the ground, you walk through it, you die right there on the spot. Fukushima Daiichi, and there's 6 places like that by reactor 2. Because it went China syndrome, right? Fukushima Daiichi has contaminated the biggest body of water on the entire planet. The whole Pacific Ocean likely to have cesium levels 5 to 10 times higher than the peak nuclear bombs test. It's way worse than that. Oh, it's so worse than that. My goodness. And I dug up some more pictures of the species for everybody today. Some of the original pictures that, because I got a tendency to use certain pictures a lot of the times. So we done research expeditions. And we done this for 6 years where we towed boats, we sailed boats, and we done the entire coastline of British Columbia, from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, year after year after year. And this is what typically a day was like for the research expeditions. And this is what the end of a day was like each day on the way back home. And so let me show you some pictures that I imported just before we went live. I haven't even went through them, so that'll be fun. That's a typical day for me. For 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home. We killed the planet. So the species to your left, right there, are exterminated. And here's the other species. These species are gone. You'll never take these pictures again. This is 100% an extinction level event. You'll never see this again. This incredible, beautiful, just wonderful diversity. Amazing. It was amazing. And I worked in this environment for years and years and years. And this is a beautiful, healthy ecosystem. It was just so wonderful. Such a beautiful experience every day. And the smells and all the insects, it was really special. And the nuclear industry destroyed it permanently. This is exterminated. Excuse me. This is an extinction level event that has happened. And pretending it's not is not a solution. At some point, you're going to have to admit that I'm right. Right? They're not pretending they're in the building because they're bored. They're pretending they're in the building because the radioactive fallout is actually real. These species are wiped out. And I've done the research expeditions. Let me show you a little bit of that before we call it a night. The species to your left, I went looking for 6 years, and I went year after year. The species to your left never recovered. They never came back. The species to the right are the same places. That's an extinction event. That's why they're pretending they're in a building that don't exist. Is the radioactive fallout is actually real, and we have wiped out the species to your left. That's what they've done. And now they're going for the coup de grace and claim no harm, no foul. And this is 12 years of straight dumping. And we know because, like, I've done this year after year after year, and I'm still doing it today. And not tomorrow, but the next day, I'll be back on the ocean doing it again. The boat is in the garage tomorrow, and we'll have the transfer case. Hopefully, I think we're getting it back tomorrow too. And James Lucid donated $520 last night and made this possible. So huge shout out to James, man. Wow. And that means we're almost resolved for that. I know Colette tried to donate last night, but that didn't show up. So check and make sure nothing happened, Colette. We've never had an issue before, so I know you've had issues with the website a few times. I think it was you mentioned it to me. But anyway, have another look and just to make sure that everything it didn't come out of your account because it never showed up, the donation. And that's true for anybody else that might have tried to donate. James Lucy stepped up and in order to get the vehicle into the garage tomorrow, I had to cough up a good chunk because every garage here is packed with people. You know, the typical garage, and I went to almost every one of them today, was 2 weeks down the road before they can get me in. So I'll be shelling out quite a bit tomorrow just to get it in, get it done. And if anybody can donate, that'll be great. And if not, that's great too, that's life. And we're going to get back on the ocean immediately after that, weather permitting, of course, or not, because I got a cabin on the boat. And I just got to put a new windshield wiper on it. I'll try to pick one up tomorrow. And can't wait to get back out there and start looking for the birds and whales again. I'm unbelievably grateful. It's impossible to articulate it to everybody that helped and made this possible. I really appreciate it. And so those species are exterminated, and that's why we're doing the research, because if we didn't do this research, we would never be able to say that. But officially, just like the buildings they're saying didn't collapse, they're saying the species are all still there. Was it worth sacrificing? Was that worth nuclear industry to sacrifice all these species? Because the species to your left, they're gone. That's it. That's not maybe. That's not perhaps. They're exterminated. And I went back year after year, and so that's the final word on that, right? But the media's out there, no, everything is perfect, it's harmless, it's like a banana. Let's come in and close the poll. We got the poll on a 50-50. In utter desperation, the industry has spammed us. Spammed the living shit out of me tonight. Could Japan's engineers put Fukushima Wastewater that the International Atomic Energy Agency says is so safe you can drink it and swim in it in a mine shaft? So if it was actually harmless, yeah, they could put it in a mine shaft, couldn't they? But the truth is the tanks are empty. That's the reality. And it's pretty impressive that I got spammed that bad tonight. That's desperation. So we'll probably have the same poll tomorrow night for a bit of fun to see if we can get them back and spam us again. Because that's kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun to see how desperate they are to try to control that particular narrative. Yeah, good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. If you're a talented homeless worker, cleanup worker, TEPCO will let you wear a titanium vest. That is fucking frightening, isn't it? Because it's true, right? Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, is it? I'll see everybody tomorrow night. We should have the truck back tomorrow. I'll drop it off tomorrow. I should get it back tomorrow by the sounds of it. I'm shelling out big money, so. And have a great night. Great day tomorrow. We'll get everybody up to speed again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is 24 hours to the fake dumping. So there's going to be tons of headlines for tomorrow night. And so tomorrow night's show and Thursday night's shows are going to be incredible shows. Because we are now right on the cusp of evil, what the nuclear industry is doing. They're about to celebrate one of their biggest coups in history in the next 48 hours. So we're going to cover that and pray humanity comes to its senses. Have a great night. A great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. If you make it this Friday, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It costs us very little. And it goes a long way. Have a great day. Great. I'm glad you heard me, Colette. That's good news. Because I just want to make sure nothing happened on your end. And it's never happened before, so it was probably just your browser didn't go through. So don't worry about it. It's all great. Have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, folks. Take care.